Good morning, welcome to my shop. My name is Randy Woods, and in part 2 of this desk build series, I will be making these 2 drawers and this apron. Welcome to part 2 of this series. This video is all about building the apron for the desk and also a couple of drawers. I've got this 4/4 walnut. It's been up on the shelf for a couple of years and I've been waiting for the right project to use it. Now I've drawn up a sketch. It shows how long each apron piece is, and this is really just to help me keep everything straight. First I need to mill all this lumber, get everything good and square, and that's where I'm going to start.
To mill this lumber, I'm using the same process that I did in part 1 of this series. Be sure to check out that video for more detail. With all my apron pieces ripped down to 3.5 inches, I go ahead and go on over to the miter saw and cut them to their final length. Using a stop block, I cut both of my long apron pieces to 70 inches. I then readjust my stop block and I cut my 2 short apron pieces to 46 inches. I take both of my front apron pieces and I go ahead and lay out where the drawer fronts are going to be. I want both of my drawers to be the exact same size, so I mark both of them at the same time.
I've got all my pieces cut and I've got everything kind of clamped together, just making sure I'm not going to run into any surprises. And when I made the legs, I relied heavily on the Festool domino, and I've decided to continue that with the apron. So I'm going to join all these pieces together using a loose tenon. One thing I'm going to do slightly different, I want my apron pieces to be inset a little bit. Now right now I've got them clamped in place to where they're flush. And I'm going to go ahead and mark where all the dominoes are going to go. And then I'm going to cut the mortise on all my apron pieces, and then I'm going to adjust the fence. I'm going to move it in to where the mortises on the legs will be in about 1 inch from the other mortises. So that ought to pretty much give me what I want. But I'm going to go ahead and mark where all these dominoes are going to go. I got all my inside support pieces cut to length, and I really wanted to wait until this stage of this build because I wasn't exactly sure how long to make them, and I could have done the math, but it's a lot easier to actually cut these to fit. So they ended up being 19 3/8 inches long, and I made 5 of them. I need 1 for each side of this drawer and 1 for each side of that drawer, and then I need a piece to go on the end of this. And I'm going to bolt that to this apron, and that's how I'm going to join these 2 desks. One thing that I did not mention, once I cut the drawer fronts out of these 2 front aprons, that saw blade, the kerf on it is about 1/8 of an inch thick. Well, you make a cut on both sides of the drawer front, and that totals 1/4 of an inch, which means whenever you put this together, it's actually going to be shorter than the back apron piece. So I went ahead and cut both back aprons down 1/4 inch. So once it's done and I'm ready to glue everything together, everything should be the same size. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the drawer fronts out of my front apron pieces, and I'm gonna go ahead and attach all of these inside support pieces, and I'm gonna be doing that using the domino, but I'm also gonna use some pocket screws in a few places because that'll make the whole process easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with all that.
This was a fairly tricky glue up, but using the dominoes really helped line everything up. I used a couple of clampet squares that I picked up at Rockler to help me keep this square. These things are really handy. I made these corner braces by first setting my miter saw to a 45-degree bevel. Using 3/4 inch plywood that's the same width as my apron, I cut out 8 braces, leaving a bevel on both sides. I added 2 pocket holes to each end of each board. Installation was pretty simple. I attached the smaller desk by first clamping it into place, and then I used a brad point bit and drilled 3 holes, and then I bolted the 2 pieces together. I really don't think the braces on the smaller desk are necessary, but they're not going to hurt anything.
Well, I'm all ready to make my drawers. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install my drawer slides. I ordered these from Amazon. They're 14-inch full extension slides. And I'm gonna go ahead and install them, and then I'm gonna take my measurement for my drawers based off of that. That kind of eliminates having to do any math.
I used my square to put a center line down each drawer support. Then I install each drawer slide on the center of that line. The front of the slide I line up right behind the back of the apron. My aprons are 3.5 inches wide. I'm cutting all my drawer sides to just right under that at 3 1/4. I'm using 1/2 inch Baltic birch plywood for this. I installed a flat tooth blade and I set the height to 1/4 inch. I set my fence about 1/2 inch away from the blade, and I cut a groove in the bottom of all my drawer sides. This groove will accept the 1/8 inch hardboard that I'm going to use for the drawer bottom. The width of my drawers need to be 22 7/8 inches. I'm going to use my cross cutting sled to cut all my pieces to length. I use a stop block clamped to my fence, and once I get my measurement, I move the stop block to where it's behind the blade. This is to prevent any kind of binding in between the saw blade and the rip fence. My drawers will be 14 inches deep, so I have to readjust my fence for the side pieces. I'm going to make a rabbet on both sides of my front and back pieces. I set the height of my blade to 1/4 inch, and then I use the stop block to establish the length of the rabbet. Using my miter gauge, I'll make several passes until all the material is cleared out. A little bit of glue and some clamping pressure is really all this drawer needs. The clampet squares make it really easy to keep this thing square. Just for peace of mind, I'm going to add a couple of screws to each corner. I rip cut about a 32nd of an inch off the top of the drawer front. This is to ensure that the drawer does not rub against the desktop whenever it's being opened. Clamping a straight edge on bottom really helps with positioning the drawer front. I decided to make the other drawer a slide out for a keyboard and mouse. I started by rip cutting a couple of pieces to 3 inches wide, and then I took them over to the miter saw and I cut them 14 inches long. I cut a dado about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of each side. In addition to the glue, I added 3 screws to each side. Installation was no different from the drawer. The drawer front was a little bit more work. I used a plug cutter and I made 3 3/8 inch plugs. I then drilled 3 holes with a Forstner bit. I'm going to use these holes to attach this to the front of the slide out with screws, and then I can plug them afterwards. A little work with a flush cutting saw and a sander, and those holes become invisible.
Well, that concludes part 2 of my gaming desk build. Be sure to check out part 3, which will be the final video in this series. If you have any comments or questions, be sure to leave that down below. And be sure to like this video if you want to see more like it, and be sure to subscribe to my channel for future content. And I hope we see you for part 3.